Hello, readers, viewers, and listeners alike. Welcome to the first of my deployment stories. If you're new here, my name is McCavity116, and in this video series, I'll be sharing stories about my first combat deployment. I spent 9 months in the Middle East during the summer, fall, and winter months of 2025, serving as part of a U.S. Army medical unit. It was simultaneously one of the most difficult and fascinating times of my life. And while I was over there, I stumbled upon some stories worth telling. And other times, I was the story worth telling. Now that some time has gone by, I'm ready to share a few of these anecdotes. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. Members of the U.S. Army are famous for telling really tall tales, and I am no exception. Everything you're about to hear has been dramatized, the truth has been enhanced, and all names are changed to protect the guilty. So this happened around the start of the deployment when I was still learning how to do my new job. I'll start from the beginning, since we're so close to it anyway. I've been serving in the Michigan National Guard for the past 10 years as a signal soldier. That means I've worked with communications technology, radios, phones, satellites, GPS, and so on. For the first 10 years of my military career, I served in the headquarters detachment of a renowned medical battalion, whose history dated back to the battles of the Argonne Forest in World War I. I also put on the uniform and served during a couple of state emergencies. I was part of the military task force that responded to the water crisis in Flint. And 5 years later, I served in 2 different task forces during the 2020 COVID pandemic, just doing whatever I could to help Michigan's community of medical workers after they were overwhelmed. You could say I earned my keep. In October of 2024, I was attending weekend drill with my National Guard unit like normal, when the first sergeant of a completely different unit walked into my team's office and loudly declared, "So who's ready to go to Iraq?" Absolutely no one said anything. The first sergeant explained that his unit, a company-sized medical unit, was being sent to Iraq on a combat deployment and they needed extra signal soldiers. They talked it over with leadership and got permission to take 2 soldiers from my unit. So, with no fanfare whatsoever, I was suddenly transferred out of my old medical battalion into this smaller medical company. I didn't go alone. One of my teammates came along for the ride. Specialist Fillmore and I were introduced to 3 other soldiers and told that the 5 of us would make up the new signal section for this deployment. For what it's worth, Fillmore and I got along with him easily, and we were all friends by the end of December drill. Specialist Pennington was a signal soldier, and she and I actually got a good laugh when we first met. By pure coincidence, Pennington had the same last name as several members of my extended family, and she looked like she was related to them as well. When we met, the first thing I said was, "Hey, do you have any relatives living in, this part of Michigan?" There was a non-zero chance that she and I were distant cousins, and we thought it was pretty funny. Specialist Burnham and I worked together before during the annual summer training, so there was already a rapport between us at this point. PFC Knox was the one and only CBRN expert in the unit. CBRN is short for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear warfare. She got attached to the signal section so she'd have something to do while we were over in Iraq. She was very shy and soft-spoken, but once we had a real conversation, I discovered exactly what was going on in her brain. And it looked something like this. So it seems like we're off to a good start, right? Going to war can't be so bad if you're friends with your teammates, right? Well, Fillmore said the right thing to the people who mattered. Pennington got sick. Like, really sick. Burnham somehow managed to get on the commander's bad side. And Knox?
What's a blood rage?
She was being Knox. And just like that, all 4 of my teammates were off the deployment, and I was going to be the one and only member of the signal section. That's how I ended up being thrown into a completely new team just a few weeks before being shipped out to Iraq. We called ourselves the Ops Cell, and there were 6 of us. Lieutenant Kidlat, Lieutenant Habercorn, Sergeant First Class Ansara, Sergeant Lee, Specialist Jackson, and myself. Okay, now that you've met all the substitute players who suddenly got promoted to first string, let's address the elephant in the thumbnail. What the hell is the Strategic Pop-Tart Reserve anyway? So this happened during our first full month in Iraq. I won't waste time with the finer details, but our company set up and ran a medical facility in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. What does that mean? We provided medical support to all of the hardcore futhermuckers who were fighting ISIS, the biggest, meanest bully in the Middle Eastern playground. My team, the Ops Cell, worked in a facility called a Tactical Operations Center, or TOC for short. My job title was Information Management Officer. If you want to learn more about how TOCs operate, I strongly recommend you check out an action movie from 2020 called The Outpost. It'll give you a basic but good idea of how TOCs work. For simplicity's sake, try to imagine that I was a member of the Best Buy Geek Squad, who also moonlights as a 911 dispatcher. So the story really kicks off on June 13th, 2025. If you live in the Middle East, you probably remember that day really well.
And then I'm like, this baby motherfucker better not blow up by nuclear shit, or I'm gonna go loco on this bitch. And then he blows up all my nuclear shit, and I'm like, call my generals. And they tell me, they're all dead, sir. And I'm like, assemble the army. And they're like, they're dead too, sir. So then I'm like, launch the friggin' missiles.
The sirens go off and wake us all up. Israel has just launched their surprise attack on Iran, and the Kataib Hezbollah militia is launching their retaliation against us. We spend the next hour and a half inside the bunkers while we wait for the base defense guys to finish shooting down the enemy drones. Then, as soon as the all-clear sounds, I run up to the TOC, where I find the night shift guys are just having a grand old time. They got to watch the entire attack play out on one of the base's security cameras. We stay up until past sunrise, trying to compile a report for the commander to explain what happened. Then our shift ends and mine begins. Lieutenant Habercorn suggested I should go get breakfast while she holds down the fort. And right when I step out the door, the sirens go off again. The base defense zone went hot dozens of times over the next few days. Each time the BDZ goes hot, a siren goes off. Everyone has to grab their weapons and gear and run to a bunker. Fortunately for me, the Tactical Operations Center where I worked was inside a hardened structure. So when the sirens sounded, I was not required to run to the bunker. I was allowed to stay at my computer and feed info to the commander. So I kept my bulletproof vest, tactical rig, helmet, and my rifle under the computer desk and just lived inside the TOC for the first 4 days of the war. Yes, I stayed inside a room no bigger than a cheap hotel closet for 4 days. I only left to use the toilet when missiles and drones weren't flying over our heads. The rest of the time, my face was glued to the screen, and I was giving the company commander a blow-by-blow commentary on what the enemy was doing. Obviously, this means I skipped a lot of meals. People noticed. On day 4, Lieutenant Habercorn and Captain Silverman, the company commander, asked me if I wanted anything from the dining facility. Because the dining facility was so far away from the TOC, I never went there during the war. I was just so worried about getting caught on the road during an air raid. Instead, I usually just ate potato chips from the lobby. But on that day, I wanted something sweet. So I asked them to bring back a packet of Pop-Tarts. I asked for 1 packet. 1. 2 hours and 1 air raid later, Lieutenant Habercorn comes back and drops 14 Pop-Tart packages on my desk. Each package had 2 pastries, which means I had 28 Pop-Tarts. Obviously, we all just had to laugh about it. It was silly, it was stupid, but more importantly, it was silly. The Pop-Tarts were the earliest incarnation of what we eventually called the Barcon Alert System. It's kind of like the DEFCON system, we just swapped out the first letters with my initials. Blake Alexander Robinson. After a couple days, everyone in the company was joking around that if Specialist Robinson was eating Pop-Tarts, then it was time to run for the bunkers. But I wasn't eating them. See, word got out about the initial Pop-Tart incident, and it became a running joke for soldiers to bring me a packet of Pop-Tarts whenever they went to the DFAC. By day 7, I had about 40 Pop-Tarts piled up in the TOC. Honestly, I was just saving them for the big one. Here's what I mean. During the 12-day war, Israel and Iran just filled the sky with missiles, drones, and fighter jets. About 4 or 5 times a day, our own base defense team would sound the air raid sirens because something was going over our heads. But there was another problem. Pro-Iranian militias were moving around all over Iraq. They launched drones of their own to harass us, and maybe once a day or so, those drones would fly right into our perimeter and try to attack. The base defense team shot down so many drones that if you were to go out into that section of the desert with a metal detector, you would need earplugs. By the 7th day of fighting, it was plainly obvious that Iran and their militia groups were planning to directly attack US bases in Iraq. And our base was on the hit list. At this point, I was intentionally stockpiling Pop-Tarts because I was planning to spend a full day inside a bunker, maybe more. A few other soldiers were planning to bring food and water into the bunkers. Specialist Escobar found a spare ammo box and filled it with candy from the last pre-war care package. And then, Operation Midnight Hammer went down.
At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States, quietly to the east with minimal communications.
On his social media platform, Truth Social, that there is an agreement between Israel and Iran. He says, congratulations, everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be complete and a total ceasefire.
We heard the news about the ceasefire agreement almost immediately, but the White House put out a message saying that Israel would stop shooting about 6 hours before the Iranians called it a day. So there was no secret. Iran and the militias were going to take a run at us before the ceasefire went into effect. So just after sundown on day 11, I made an announcement that I was releasing the Strategic Pop-Tart Reserve. I laid out almost 60 packets of Pop-Tarts in the break room, one for every member of our company with a few left over. It made things a little easier because we spent nearly 7 hours hiding in the bunkers on that final crazy morning. In those last few hours before the ceasefire went into effect, the enemy pulled out all the stops. Our friends at All You Need Air Base in Qatar got one hell of a show. And we got the drones. All the drones. But after a while, when the sun came up, things finally got quiet again. So, what was my one big takeaway from the 12-Day War? I am really sick of Pop-Tarts now. It is going to be years before I can look at one without feeling my stomach turn. Oh, and you best believe that all the other soldiers kept this damn joke alive for the rest of the deployment. After the 12-Day War, we still had 9 months before it was time to go home. Whenever the DFAC had Pop-Tarts, someone was sure to let me know. Whenever a care package had Pop-Tarts, someone told me about it. If the USO or Red Cross got their hands on those demonic Kellogg products, I somehow got looped in. At least, now that I'm back home, I can quietly hate those pre-cooked toaster pastries in peace.